So all people utilize
Excused from this evening's meeting tonight is Jim Vina. Alternate is Anthony Calaguerre, Skip Berbernitz, and Aidan O'Connor. Also, Dr. Jagoda and Steve Retzlaff have also been excused. Disciplinary action. Department of Health advised that as a result of an investigation, Kelly Omland from East Islip, New York State EMT 390864, had his or her certification suspended for 18 months, effective 12/18/17. First 3 months are an actual suspension. Remaining 15 months is stayed for violations of Part 800.16. Correspondence. Course applications, Hudson Valley EMT, original and refresher classes started on January 16, 2018. Western Turnpike EMT core content refresher starts 4/16/18. And under additional correspondence, informational from REMAC, the following appointments were made at our December 6th, 2017 REMAC meeting. Systems Medical Director, Dr. Michael Daly. REMAC Chair, Dr. Rob McHugh. And REMAC Vice Chair, Dr. Nick Rathert. All appointments are subject to Remsco confirmation. Note of thanks from Shaker High School Career Fair Committee for REMO's participation in their November 21st, 2017 Career Fair. Any questions or discussion? CON Committee?
There was no action before the committee.
So Executive Director Tim, report?
Hopefully everybody has a copy of my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions relative to the report. I foresee a rather lengthy meeting tonight, so the one thing I would like to bring to everyone's attention is a young lady sitting over in the corner over here. This is Miss Jennifer Nichols. She's a new addition to our QA, a most welcome new addition to our QA/QI staff. And I'd just like everybody to welcome Jen tonight.
Welcome, Jen.
She'll be accessible to you folks. Should you have any questions or anything else. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Basically, that will conclude my report, unless anybody sees anything on here they'd like to ask me about.
Thank you, Tim. Treasurer, Peter?
I like Tim, you have the information in front of you, so I won't belabor the fact of continuing to go over it. Santa Claus was not good to us over the last 2 months. We had a $42,000 loss over the 2 months, mostly because our grant revenue hasn't been in that. But we're still in a very good, healthy financial position.
So the loss is actually just paper as opposed to...
Yes, correct.
Finance Committee, Steve?
Two things bring forward for action from Finance. Number one is in the preparation of the budget for this fiscal year, the Executive Director did not place any compensation change for himself into the salary plan, while he did place adjustments for members of the staff, both as part of the reorganization of the Remsco, rather the REMO, as well as under some merit or cost of living. So I'd like to make a motion that we give Tim, the Executive Director, a 3% cost of living increase.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
The second thing I'd like to bring up is I'll ask the Executive Director to give us the full explanation, but we have had a significant amount of reorganization here of the staff that Tim explained to us as part of the business plan, and then as he's gone out and started hiring individuals to fill roles and transfer some people to different roles. And Tim brought up an issue of salary parity. In looking at the qualifications of the individuals that are filling current positions, as well as the work that they are doing, he felt that there was a place where one of our employees' salary parity was not appropriate with another one of our employees. So he would like to bring forward that we give a salary increase to Deb Cuffs. I'll bring it forward as a motion after Tim explains exactly what he's worked out. And it would be budget neutral in this fiscal year, but would have to be paid for in the next fiscal year. So,
Thanks, Steve. I did not present this in the budget because I did not know who we were going to hire to work alongside Deb Cuffs in QA, QI. When we hired Deb, it would take about a little over a year ago, I brought her in at the same hourly rate as the incumbent that was in there at that time, Dean Romano. Despite some, I think, rather significant credentials and a lot of letters after Deb's name, she agreed to work at a reduced hourly rate because that's what the incumbent was making at that time. In addition, she was actually capped salary-wise because of recent retirement issues and benefits and stuff that she agreed to. So I had the option of either having her work a lot of hours at a reduced rate or a few hours at a higher rate. We came to the common conclusion that she would initially work for the reduced rate. We brought another person into the office just recently with a lot of credentials. And let me backtrack because Deb Cuffs has a lot of credentials as well. Not only RN/paramedic, she's an advanced life support CIC, and she also holds a title of regional faculty in our region. I pay Richard Ruther $30 an hour as an ALS CIC. Deb brings that up another notch with the addition or the title of regional faculty. What I am proposing to do is increase her rate from $20 and change an hour to $30 an hour to reflect the credentials now, mentioning that her salary cap has been removed because she just turned a certain age, so she can make more money. But that's not the reason I'm doing it. The issue here is parity in that office, and I think I have two people with similar credentials. I think that they should be compensated in a similar fashion. The reason it's budget neutral this year is because Jen did not take office until about a week and a half ago. October, November, and December, we were not paying that salary. That salary equates to about $6,400 for those 3 months. The addition for Deb Cuff's hourly rate will equate to about $6,000 over the remainder of our budget year. So it's basically a budget neutral change this year. Obviously, I know I'll have to come back next year and build certain accommodations into the budget to keep that going and keep that moving forward.
So I would like to make a motion that we authorize the executive director to increase the salary of Deb Cuffs to $30 an hour. That's the whole motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Do we have any discussion before we-
Any discussion?
30. I'm sure she'll thank you.
What does that work out to for the year? What's the difference work out to?
It's roughly, the addition
Yes.
is roughly $6,000. And roughly, when I crunched the numbers for the 3 months that Jen was not here, it was $6,400. So I sat down with Dave today, so basically should be a wash this budget cycle.
What's your plan for next year to find the extra one?
You'll have to ask me about August or July what my plan is, but I intend to keep both those folks in there, andLl have to.
So you're giving up your 3% next year?
That's like
I'll make it.
I'm not the first one to make that joke.
No, somebody beat you to that one.
Joke.
I'll make it work. And obviously, everybody will have the budget beforehand to review it and approve it.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That concludes your meeting. Medical Director, Dr. Daly.
probably the most important thing from a medical director's perspective is that we're getting closer to making this the year of the cardiac arrest. We've spent some time already looking at how we're going to integrate cares for agencies in Albany County, and starting that up and kicking it off over the course of the next couple of months. This is kicking off directly from Mission Lifeline success that we had, and the fact that for the first time we actually have people in hospitals who will help us out by collecting data for us and be able to give us the final answer for what happens to the patients that we bring them. There are going to be 3 different components of the cardiac arrest program, and I'll bring you those pieces as they come together. Another one that you know of already, and we've talked about before, is evaluating the life pack data to give people the ability to review their own cardiac arrests. So I'm excited about where we're going to go this year. Really excited about having Jen and Deb to work with on these projects, and I see a lot of potential success here. Moving directly into the Medical Advisory Committee report. First, for those of you that don't know Dr. McHugh, he is over there. This is my last report as the chair of the REMAC. This will be done by Dr. McHugh in the future, which is extremely exciting for me, probably for you. But Dr. McHugh is the incoming chair of the REMAC. Things in particular that we covered in December included further discussions that we've had before about what indeed defines a billable signal, and then putting together a group of people to ultimately decide what the price of a signal should be. As you'll remember, the price of a signal for ALS agencies currently is $1.10 per signal or ALS call. That has been unchanged now for probably about 10 years. 10 years? Jeff, what do you think? Long time. The original goal was that we would continue to advance it to support the mission, but it hasn't changed in years. That money ultimately has gone to a lot of different good things, including supporting our phone system, which has just gotten a significant upgrade. It's supporting our CARES registry entry. So a lot of good stuff along the way. We talked a little bit about something that also has been hot business, which is supporting 800 radio integration for the hospitals. And this will continue, and we'll probably end up coming here with a funding request at some point over the course of the next several months. We're working with the Sheriff's Department in Albany County, as well as the City of Albany, to fund radios for hospitals that impact care in the City of Albany and the County of Albany. Interestingly, that actually covers the entire footprint of the region, with the possible exception we're going to have to figure out how to integrate Columbia Memorial. That'll be the hardest one to integrate. So that's an exciting process to see coming forward, and we'll just have to see how that ultimately goes. We had an utterly fascinating review of video laryngoscopes, and probably the most interesting part of that was, I don't know, Scott, if you want to talk to this really briefly, but the physicians and the paramedics had a slightly different perspective on some video laryngoscopes, and I really appreciated the opportunity to hear both perspectives and to put my hands on the Roosh Air Track that is being implemented in Galatia, and I understand is being implemented in a couple of other places as well, specifically to use video record of an intubation as part of the patient's record, which is a really kind of a cool way. When somebody says, hey, it's not in, you can say, well, actually, there it is going in, and here's my waveform capnography until I turn the patient over to you. Where's your waveform capnography in the hospital? So it's a really nice way to support quality paramedics and enhance the mission. So that was very exciting. That occurred between the academic committee and the MAC, and I thought it was excellent discussions. We did hold our elections. The endorsements of the systems medical director, the chair, and the vice chair
We can do now, or we can do later, it's entirely up to the chair. Whatever you would prefer, Madam Chair. Would you like to have the council endorse the appointments now, or later in new business where they currently exist? It doesn't matter.
It's currently under new business for.
Want to leave it there, it's fine. Absolutely. There is a new door code for Samaritan. So those are the big things. If anybody is interested in being part of the process for signal fee determination, please let Tim know so you can join us for that discussion. Thank you.
Steve, EMS Council?
The EMS Council did not meet in January because of a lack of a quorum. There were several members that were taken ill with the flu, and so
Well, Lester's fault.
no business was transpired. The next meeting, the council will be in May. Because the council did not meet, there was no election of officers, so I remain the chair of the council until May, when the new chair will be elected. And Dr. Daly, I don't know if you have anything from the CMAC meeting you wish to report on, since the Remsco did not meet.
The protocols will be coming eventually. This is the BLS protocols. The EMSC was asked to participate and assist us with a list of changes that they suggested. And instead, unfortunately, we received a rewrite of the entire document, which has put off the updated BLS protocols by another 4 or 5 months. But as one of my very smart colleagues said, we waited 30 years to update the BLS protocols. If we wait another few months and do it right, that's even better. The one most notable discussion was around the age of a pediatric patient, which will most likely end up as a patient who has not yet attained their 15th birthday. So this is being driven by the American College of Surgeons Committee on Trauma and their definition of the pediatric trauma patient, as opposed to the existing ACLS definition that we have been using for a while through the Heart Association of Science of Puberty. And we may leave both in depending on where you are at the protocols, which sounds confusing to me. Stand by.
As Tim noted in his report, Lee Burns, the director of the Bureau of EMS, retired on December 27th. Andy Johnson is the interim director of the Bureau of EMS right now, and will be serving in that capacity until there is a new director appointed. The Department of Health has held interviews for the director's position. They've also established a deputy director's position, and up until now there has not been a deputy director. I believe interviews for the deputy director position have restarted. I don't know if they've concluded. There's been no announcement yet on who the new director will be, even though I've been told that there was a very good field of qualified candidates, and it's working its way through the process.
The nurse committee report, I will report on. We met on January 16th. We had a good turnout. We discussed crisis patients and how the volumes had increased. We continue to have that problem where we require more staff and resources to sit with one-to-one patients who present that are suicidal or homicidal. So we talked about ways to try to manage those patients and what a challenge it is. We had a big discussion about the slide sheets and the hover mat. St. Peter's was at this meeting, so they are going to reach out to Trinity, which is their overlying body for the entire system, and they are going to see if they could do like a listserv regarding the hover mats and as well as the slide sheets, to see if they'd be able to get maybe some good pricing, and we would be able to bring that back. We've talked about this for those of you who are new to the group. We've been trying to see if we would be able to do a one-for-one exchange for both slide sheets and maybe the hover mats. And we've had a lot of discussion, we've done a lot of research, excuse me. Amanda Behringer from Memorial did a lot of work with, she unfortunately wasn't able to make the last meeting, but she did get pricing, and we were hoping that we would be able to somehow, really it has come down to the financial piece. How do we get the EMS agencies to really start up this either one-for-one exchange? So I bring that back here, wondering if we could even maybe have another brief discussion now to see if we would be able to get money, maybe from Remo, do a proposal for that, something along that line, or if people have any other thoughts. I'd like to get the pricing to see what it is. Most of the hospitals in the area do have either hover mats or slide sheets already in the emergency department. So on our end, we would have, for the hover mats, we've got the canister, and so do all the other hospitals in the region. So it wouldn't be much of an expense to us. The other thought was we could possibly reach out, to our own, to the hospitals to see if they would be willing to, come forth with some money like they did, previously when we've asked the hospitals for money for various things. So for the modems and things like that. So are there any thoughts? I know we've put this out here several times. I think, Scott, you had some thoughts the last time, and I don't know if you've had anything more that you've
I don't know that I have any additional thoughts. I think it's obviously a necessary thing. Again, not sure where all this falls. I kind of raised the question the last time, whether it's an academic and MAC kind of conversation because it's more of an operational thing, but if there was to be some funds attached to it, obviously this body, is in on that conversation. So I don't think we've met again, have we? Dr. Daly, have we met since the last conversation? I don't think we met and had another conversation about this. I know that there was a small group of us that wanted to get together and meet to discuss it some more. Brian had expressed some interest, I know. Just to give you some more information for your committee, in case we don't meet as a smaller group. We've had a lot of workings with the company. I don't remember the name of the company, if it's Hoverjack is the name of the company, I think. They have created for us the device that we wanted to go on top of the bariatric stretcher, which will allow us to now raise a patient on that stretcher without having to lift the stretcher manually. For those that don't know, the bariatric stretcher that's made by Stryker, at least, is not hydraulic. So it's great that you can get them on it, but then you can't get the stretcher to line up with any bed anywhere without lifting it up. If you've got a 600-pound patient, it takes 4 to 6 people minimum to lift the patient up to meet a hospital bed or a nursing home bed. So we worked with Hoverjack to get them to create one of their hover jacks that goes on the floor, generally to pick these patients up off the floor. They scaled it down to fit our mattress, to fit our stretcher, and they made it in smaller chambers so that we can inflate it in smaller increments, so that we can raise the patient up without having to raise the stretcher up. And so now we can put a hover mat on top of that, and we can raise that up and then use the hover mat to move them over and never have to lift them. So they actually, I guess for all of our work and effort, they've decided to give us the prototype free of charge, which was kind of cool. So
we have a similar thing where you could get the patient out of a car. So we
Yeah.
keep it in triage, and that's called the Hoverjack. We're able to do very similar.
Right.
to what you're saying.
yeah, so this is just a scaled down version of that to fit the stretcher. Yeah. So they've been a great company to work with, and I don't know what the answer is in terms of,
I think that you really, if you have the buy-in from the hospitals that they're willing to do something like this, I think it needs to have a group from here. There needs to be some commercial representation, some not-for-profits and some municipal people. We all work off a different budget and budget sources and budget cycles, but I think that, from an administrator of an agency, I'd love for the regional council to just foot the bill and buy all of it, but they don't know that as a member of the regional council, how many more projects we can continue to foot the bills for, so maybe some sort of buy-in from both, and and some consortium to where we can group purchase and say, you know, this is what we want, you know, it's gonna be one-for-one exchange where you're going, you know, as a group purchase, we cut it down to this, you know, maybe or maybe not, we add in a little bit of money to bring it down even more, if you guys went in, buy them. And
Right.
people are more apt to take care of them, I think, then, and have them, and, you know, I mean, for somebody like me who has 4 ambulances, maybe it's not that big a deal. For somebody like Mohawk, you know, has dozens and dozens, that's a big bill. You know, Colony, you know, has a ton of ambulances, so the buy-in's gonna be different from each agency, but I think if you can get a mix of people to see how that works, I think this is the best thing to come along since the power stretcher. I mean, when you look at injuries and safety in EMS, and an aging population in EMS, not just in the area, you know, say we can maybe prevent a back injury from this, I'm all for it. I think, you know, if we could get a one-for-one exchange, I'd buy 4 of them tomorrow. So I think if you're at that point where you have hospital buy-in and willingness to do it, that maybe it's the time where you bring in some EMS leaders from different types of agencies to say, how do we make this work? Because the hospital is willing to do a one-for-one exchange. I mean, you bring a fat guy in like me and you put me into, you know, bed at St. Peter's, you hook the pump up that's there at some station local in the ED where we all as providers know where it is. You slide me over, put the pump back, and you go to a you know, a restock area, grab a new one and leave it back in service. So, I mean, that's my thoughts. It's,
Actually, highlight the most important thing of this. You know, there's no doubt that that this is something that, you know, I've been pushing for a little while now. And I see the need, I see the safety. I'm excited to see some of the people in the region already starting to deploy it. But if there's gonna be one-to-one exchange, it's gotta be complete buy-in from every hospital, or we end up in safe harbors issues. So I think to some extent, a small group of people from the council, frankly, working with the nurses committee, and ultimately reaching out to the hospitals to get their buy-in is gonna be the most important thing. The tail has to wag the dog on this one.
I mean, I think people on the nurse committee are certainly willing to do, you know, we've got Ellis, St. Peter's, and Albany, Madden, Saratoga. We had 4 bigger hospitals. I think everybody's in agreement, and I think that we're certainly feeling we'd be able to facilitate it on, you know, on the hospital side. One discussion that did come up was, I can't remember who was talking about it, was, you know, what do they do with maybe the nursing homes in the area? You know, like, do they, you know, if they're not, so if they put the hover net on the patient because you know, it is disposable, then, and they're not doing an exchange, then what are they gonna, you know, what are you gonna do? And do you only put it on the ones that you're gonna bring to a hospital? So that was the EMS side that they talked about. I think, you know, they had, you know, quite a discussion about that. But I mean, I think there's a lot of other kind of nitty-gritty things that we probably have to work out.
well,
but I think
that's an
most of us
operational
are-
thing. I mean,
Yeah.
Scott deals with a nursing home all the time that you're taking to, taking from.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you're gonna use them for their.
Yeah, that would just be on us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, we wouldn't expect a one-for-one exchange from anybody, we would just incur that cost,
Yeah.
so.
If we're gonna move forward with this, it's gonna take to having buy-in from, if it's voluntary, enough EMS agencies to make it worth doing. If it's mandatory, all EMS agencies. I think the place that leadership would come is from the Remsco. I think that maybe this would be a good time for us to appoint an ad hoc committee that could work with the nurses committee, then give them a sort of a charge that has a time limit on it and some sort of bullets of an assignment that says we would like this ad hoc committee to come back to the Remsco in whatever amount of time with, and one of the things they should come back with is a little bit of a justification and a plan, because those of us around the table that have talked about it a few times seem to feel this is a really good thing, but for us to sell it to get every EMS agency involved, we're gonna have to be able to present to them, this is what we wanna do, this is why we wanna do it, this is the data that supports it, this is the financial case, this is the workplace safety case. And so, I think a committee with some support from the staff could probably make a dent in that and bring something back.
I certainly think that it should try to have some representation from the 6 counties as somebody from, that would represent that county and be able to collect some data, or some ideas from the entire county. You know, if it ends up with, 6 of us on it, 3 from Columbia County, 3 from Albany County, we're, gonna be a little futile, I think, that if we can get it. I mean, I'll certainly volunteer myself for Albany County. I think that this is a great idea, but, it should be, otherwise we're gonna have extra homework trying to contact other counties and not knowing who we should be contacting or whatever.
Anyone interested in being on the ad hoc committee? Scott? And Brian? You on? Steve Kroll?
He's like,
Yeah, Les said he wanted to.
Okay. Adam?
Carol and I are beyond that.
All right, good, so that's 4 counties.
I just had one question. What you mentioned about the nurses committee, St. Peter's, and
Yeah.
reaching out to their,
Trinity?
yeah. Would that be something that we could buy through one plate? Is that where you're doing
That's what,
that?
I think so, and, because they can get a discount, and that's what they were talking about, so if we could do something like that, and probably, and we were talking, I know on our side, we looked at things where if you bought 1 canister, they'd give you X number of slide sheets, or vice versa.
Could we get the canisters from them then?
See, that might be the thing too, so if there's a large number that
I'm
we're doing
sure.
this, we're gonna get them, I'm sure that they'll do something for us, so that's what we're trying to try to see where we can get some pricing.
I'd like to suggest that we ask the CMAC chair, the REMAC chair, if he would approach the REMAC and get maybe 1 or 2 physicians from the REMAC also to join the committee. And the first job for the committee should be coming back, is to develop what they think they need to do. So come back next month with a charge that says, we'll do as a committee the following things.
So Dr. McHugh is shaking his head, so you will do that. That's great. So we have 4 reps, so should maybe send out an email, we can get the other 2 counties, or is there anyone else that?
Maybe Tim, you could
I'd
send
love
out an
to.
email, but so we have,
Send-
well, we don't have 4 counties, because we have Albany,
Schenectady?
you're Columbia, you're not necessarily a county, but.
Who do we have? Brian Woods, Steve
They
Kroll,
can.
Someone from
Scott.
Saratoga?
I mean,
Okay.
they can represent,
Tracy.
I mean, they're in 4,
Great.
Okay.
why not?
Who's that 4th person?
Oh, Tracy volunteered.
Tracy?
Mhm.
All right.
We have Scott, Brian,
And Steve.
Steve,
That'd
we've
be
got
fine.
Carol, and Les.
Okay.
Okay, would you be one of the
One or
councils
the other.
or no?
As
I
long
just look
as
at you
one
guys
can-
and think it's Schenectady County, because that's where your home base is, or no? Is there another county? So are we all represented?
It's diverse enough, I mean, we got nonprofit, municipal,
It's got some diversity.
commercial, I mean,
And
Well,
I'd
it's a
like
good
to
start.
suggest
I
that
understand.
Well, together we can hit the other agencies. Tim can help us with a spreadsheet.
So who would like to chair this subcommittee?
Scott,
Who would like to chair
Too
this
late.
subcommittee?
you don't do anything, you're the chair.
Brian?
Chairman
You
Wood.
say yes, okay.
Yeah, that-
You got it. All right, Brian, way to step up.
Good
Or
enough.
not step back.
Got it. Okay, perfect.
well, I already volunteered less, I couldn't do it again.
Easy there, pal.
Under the 1-for-1 exchange, St. Peter's said that they are going to have just 1 password for the 3 hospitals, and they're gonna be rolling that out probably soon. They're in the process of trying to get that up and going, so it'll be Memorial, Samaritan, and St. Peter's, so those will be bring patients to all 3 places, would have the same password as what they said, so more to come on that. And let's see, capacity, we spent a good portion of our meeting, we actually met for, what, Carol, a good 2 hours, almost even more. Talked a lot about capacity, how we're handling capacity, some of the things we're doing, not only on the front end in the ED, and we got into a big discussion about EMS agencies and those people who have to wait a long time to handle up a patient. And what are some of the things that the hospital side can do to help, alleviate that length of time? And we talked about I think the longest that was reported was like 2.5 hours was that they were waiting to hand up a patient. And the least amount of time in some of the bigger hospitals, like 15 minutes, so I'm sure for you guys, that's huge. I know at Saratoga, our handoff is still pretty good. It's probably in the average of like 5 to 10 minutes, so it isn't too bad, and we've been holding a lot of admissions in the ED too. We talked about which different ways to kind of offset like the hospital side and staff coming, but really looking at not only it being an ED problem and what we're doing on the emergency department side, but what are they doing on the back end, really to try to not only get the patients and pull them instead of that push, but to get the pull kind of mentality on the floors, but also like what are they doing on the discharge side, because that's a big deal, trying to get that length of stay down in the hospital, and you can get it down by a day or so to really like to get down to like a 4.8 length of stay. That's huge, but that's a big deal because we're finding a lot more patients that are sicker and sicker, so they're just not being, they're not being discharged, as quickly as they used to. The other issue is that readmission avoidance, so there's that's the other side of it, so they discharge them sooner, or we discharge them from the ER, and if they come back, then we get dinged for that, readmission, so a lot of stuff going on, a lot of discussion, but we all, really, are facing the same issues, but we could work together, collaboratively with EMS to certainly respect. I think the biggest thing is respect what you guys are faced with when you are getting calls that you need to get back out in service. And
Are you looking at the hospital diversion issues as well?
we are, and
The reduction of hospital emergency rooms.
yeah, so we
Well,
talked a lot about
hospital cost diversion.
Samaritans, so now at Samaritan, the issue is St. Mary's, that they, that's not an ED anymore, so, and again, those of you, I haven't been to Samaritan, but hearing horror stories of the numbers of patients and just that it's not even built big enough, but most of the.
But when a
lot of-
hospital calls it a diversion,
Yep. So
yeah,
there's-
they actually do reach out and actually look at the other hospitals.
Yep,
And the medical center is also crowded, and St. Peter's is also crowded.
yep.
Well, guess what, Samaritan? You have to take them as well.
Well, right, but I think, so where I was going with that is that Samaritan used to divert to St. Mary's, and now with that closed, they don't, so now it's across the river, is what they're saying, or vice versa,
Even when we
so.
start diverting patients from Remsco County or Albany County, it just exacerbates the situation in Albany County.
And they're doing that, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
D-
but the
diverting
Samaritan
that.
Hospital goes on diversion,
Okay.
that's
That's
where
where
they
they're
go.
going.
But let's remember something, there's two different things. We have basically the friendly agreement to divert ambulances for a couple hours to take the pressure off, which is done by administrators in the hospitals calling each other and having a discussion, and a true, honest to God, no one's coming here diversion. A true, honest to God, no one's coming here diversion needs to be reported to the Department of Health.
Right.
The other is just a friendly agreement between the hospitals. When a patient rips a sprinkler off a sprinkler head in a hospital that just built a new emergency department and floods an emergency department, that's an honest to God diversion. Right? When birds fall from the sky outside an emergency department, that's an honest to God diversion. Right? Most of the time that doesn't actually. Thank goodness.
One of the things about diversion is, I know I struggle with, is people that are field providers that are not at meetings like this kind of complain a lot about this, but this is a challenge that faces our whole healthcare system. Would there be anyone here have any interest in asking a couple of the physicians that represent the emergency departments to do some sort of either educational briefing or CME, or even a presentation at this meeting that we can take back to our agencies about what's happening in the healthcare system and why emergency rooms are so crowded right now? Would people find that as something valuable to educate their agency members, or is that just something I'm interested in?
I mean, it's certainly interesting. The question I have would be, why, when we continue to grow as an EMS system and hospitals continue to consolidate, why we don't do something more formal to where we open chain of communications and I think that, like we have a nurses committee, and then we have the regional council, and then we have the REMAC, and we have, like, why don't we ever have a committee where we just talk about it, whether at the nurses committee, either have some representation on it from EMS, because when you have discussions, like, and maybe I'm totally off key here, cause I don't know what goes on at the nurses committee, but when you're talking about issues of ED overcrowding and stuff like that, what, I mean, you guys all know you're busy and you're overcrowded, but how does that play back to the providers? And then how do we get that back out to our staff? So, I mean, your point's good, do we have some doctors come in here and talk about it? But, I mean, we need to have a good line of communications and be like, I'll tell you, St. Peter's just did basically a phone call discussion, and Dr. Bosco talked to a lot of us about our interactions with St. Peter's and explained stuff. I was on the phone with him for like 40 minutes and talked about a lot of problems. He gave me some good insight. I gave him some good stuff back. And I gotta be honest with you, St. Peter's is night and day different now than it was before that phone call. Even nurses that I spoke to them directly about problems that I've had interacting with them are pleasant as pipe. I think I almost got invited to dinner the other night. But I think that we need to do a better job of communicating amongst the system.
Yeah.
And not, you know, this thing with the hover mats may be a good example of how we can all work together with the hospitals and the EMS agency to move forward, but.
So at Saratoga, we do that with the, most of the ED providers are medical directors for many of the agencies. Dr. Brooks has Saratoga Fire, Al Jagoda, has Malta. There, every one of the different physicians have, Jason Burnett has something, Todd Duthaler has Malta. So we do collaborate with them a lot, and then I sit on their administrative council, so we meet monthly, and we do exchange a lot back and forth. We did when we went live with our STEMI program, so we brought a lot of that back. We're bringing back data, but also this is always a discussion, or if there's a one-for-one issue, one-for-one exchange issue. We're going with a new, process where you're going from Pyxis to OmniCell. So just those, I think that communication.
Can you slow down just a little bit? You're going from what to what?
Pyxis to OmniCell with the EMS.
I'm like really tired and
So-
I'm kind of like losing it. So are we gonna go later than 8:30, do you think? Because my stamina, I've been in court all day, so I'm like, I just need you to slow down a little bit. My mind is mushed right now.
Okay. Did you get everything you guys said?
I get the Pyxis to Omni.
Okay, that was it. So we actually have that collaboration. So.
Well, I think this council serves as a bridge to the hospital community. So we have the conversation that's gonna happen about the sliders and hover mats. And that's something that then we can take forward and meet with representatives of the hospitals, whether it be the nurses committee representatives or whether, in Anne Marie's case at Saratoga, she's the head of the emergency department, so she would be the hospital's representative. We might have to look at who's on that committee and how it affects the other hospitals. But we can have a similar dialogue about any topic. If we think we want to learn more about why emergency rooms are overcrowded and educate ourselves and what kind of dialogue we can have back and forth with them, with the hospitals, that's something we can reach out as a council and do. It could be something we ask the hospitals to designate, through the nurses committee, to designate someone to meet with us and talk about. So if that's a topic of interest to us, I think the first step of it is to learn about it, because I think there's a lot of reasons why Anne Marie alluded to that. The hospital emergency rooms are overcrowded because the hospitals are full. And it cascades down through the system. It's not just one thing. And my background's in hospital administration, so I know a lot about that, but I don't know that all of us do.
And then the last thing that we talked about at the nurse committee was the discussion of the critical shortage of the IV solutions. And we did touch base a little bit about that at our executive group. And we certainly can open that up if we want to. We can defer it to next week to be respectful of time, because I know we have other things going on. So we can certainly do that. I think that's something that will be a topic maybe for next month. But I think it's something we're all faced with, is the critical shortage of IV solution and what we're doing, because the hospitals are, as well as EMS. So, like I said, we talked a little bit about it, but just more of an opinion of what's what's going on out there.
I'd like to recommend that the council, if the council, this was brought up in the earlier, in the executive meeting, I've been thinking about things we might be able to do. So without having the full discussion tonight, I would recommend that the council write a letter to the Iroquois Healthcare Alliance and the Healthcare Association of New York State, which are the trade associations that represent hospitals that have both been actively working on the drug shortage and the IV shortage issue, expressing that this is significantly affecting the pre-hospital care community throughout our region and throughout the state, and express an interest in whether there's any interest on their part in working with us to try and mitigate the shortage for pre-hospital, to include pre-hospital care providers in their discussions of trying to mitigate the shortages.
It's a fantastic idea.
And I'll volunteer to write it, since I haven't been volunteering for any jobs tonight.
And our
Is that a
next,
Is that a motion?
Do we need a motion, or
Do you
just,
want us to write it?
I'll just write it if there's a consensus?
If you're gonna write a letter on behalf of the council, it should probably come as a motion.
Okay, then I make a motion that we write a letter to the Healthcare Association of New York State, and Iroquois Healthcare Alliance, expressing interest in collaborating between pre-hospital care providers and the hospital community in strategies to alleviate the shortage of drugs and IV solutions.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And our next, just to conclude the nurse committee, our next meeting will be held on March 14th at St. Peter's Hospital. Okay. TJ, MCI committee?
No report.
Okay, then, we have membership nominating,
Membership committee
bylaws.
has no report.
I'm sorry?
Membership committee has no report. Nominating committee, we have a slate of officers, people who have volunteered for positions, and nominations will be open from the floor, and we'll do the elections under new business. The slate as it stands right now is treasurer P.J. Keeler, secretary myself, Lynn King, second vice chair Steve Retzlaff, first vice chair Steve Kroll, and chairperson Anne-Marie Cross and Scott Bowman. I'm done with the nominating committee. The awards committee? The awards committee, the committee, I sent a message out to the committee members early this morning, for suggestions about flyers and how to get information out. The flyer will be distributed, by February 1st, and nominations will be due back for the regional EMS awards by April 1st. I don't know if there's a QI committee, or do you want me to just do the bylaws?
Dean's not here, but I believe the next meeting is gonna be Wednesday, February 7th, just before academic.
Just a question, will that switch to somebody else as the reporting person?
Yes, it will. I guess I'm gonna have to decide that. Yes. I'm gonna circle that.
Bylaw committee, the committee has worked very hard for the last 6 months, and we have proposed bylaws which will be distributed, and they will be briefly reviewed under new business after the items listed there.
Thank you. Under county reports, Brian Wood, Albany County? Columbia, TJ?
EMT classes just finished their practical, and they're currently working with the Columbia County Safe Schools Committee on working on another active shooter drill.
Aiden is not here for Green, is there another representative for,
No report.
Remsco County, Amy? I have nothing to report. Saratoga County,
Nothing to report.
and Schenectady County?
Just really quick, it came up in conversation with overdoses. We had a string of them in Schenectady County, specifically the city of Schenectady. What started out as a innocent information share amongst agency, like ALS coordinators, kind of branched out to county health and some other agencies that were interested in getting that information on a more real-time basis than what they get months later. So, discussing stuff with Dr. Daly and a few of the other coordinators, we came up with the idea of a Google group that we can send invites out to coordinators throughout the Remo region. Tim has graciously volunteered some Remo services to gather some of that data and post it in the Google group. We haven't really narrowed down exactly what data. We were thinking along the lines of the date, the time of the call, the age of the patient, how much Narcan was used for that reversal, what the outcome was, and what agency did it, so that people have an idea of what's coming along. And that has proved to be fruitful in Schenectady County specifically, where other agencies have had to use increased amounts of Narcan. So City of Schenectady in particular was able to, I was able to put more in our drug boxes and effectively treat patients as we saw. So I just want to get everybody's idea on that, and if that would be something the agencies would participate in.
Are you familiar with ODMAP? ODMAP, it's an acronym?
No.
No. It's a program created by a DEA agent in Baltimore, I believe. And it's run now by the DEA. And basically agencies, police, fire, EMS agencies can sign up to be a part of it, and they log non-HIPAA information, zip code, whether it was a fatality, how much Narcan. I believe it's, once you state that you gave Narcan, it asks how much you gave. And it maps it, plotting points on a map. And you can, as an administrator, you have several different levels of login. You can log in as an administrator, or your employees can have user level access, and they can see just a map, and they can actually see it in real time where these points are happening. So the idea being that, if there was a bad batch, say, coming up from the city, you'd be able to see it moving up through the Hudson Valley. So that thing kind of exists already, and it's pretty robust. It's pretty impressive. If you can Google it and find the information, fine. If not, I can get you the information. We just signed up to do it. There's a couple of police agencies in Columbia County that have it. I was actually going to have him, the chief of Chatham Police, come to our county meeting to talk to the other EMS agencies about it, to try and get the rest of the EMS agencies in Columbia County to sign up, basically for the same reason.
Is there a fee?
No, it's free.
And the only problem with that is if your police agency does it and you do it, it's gotta be one or the other, or you're gonna be logging the same call and they don't differentiate. So
Yeah, it has no way of knowing, because all you're putting in is a zip code and a thing. So, if your police agency's doing it too, you just want to communicate with them and say.
So each agency
I
inputs
got
their own
this.
data?
Yeah. So you just want to be able to communicate with
Please,
them.
and I'm doing that.
No, right.
Oh, you don't wanna do that.
It seems like a lot of work.
It's really, pretty simple in terms of inputting the data. You go to a website, click on a button, type in, whatever. The buttons are separate, so you would click, say, fatal overdose, gave Narcan 2 milligrams, and you type in a zip code or something, boom, done. It literally takes a minute to log that. So pretty simple, quick and easy, and then all the agencies that participate can see that and share that information in real time. So kind of does what you want it to do, maybe without somebody having to try to manage a mailing list and whatever. So just an option. That's all.
That's more work for me, though. On the hundreds of, Narcan administrations that we do, which is.
Well, the
That-
user,
that would add up.
the user can do it. Not the heroin user, right, exactly.
So each paramedic.
Yeah, right, they could have a user level login. When they do their chart, they just go to the website, log it, done. So you wouldn't necessarily have to do them all as an administrator.
With the system he's talking about would pull directly out of charts, I thought that was what you.
Right, right.
So if you put the chart in, it populate automatically.
Yeah, we could set up through EMS charts, actually, Pete Brody with New York State has a different way of grabbing even data from agencies that don't participate in EMS charts.
Yeah.
And just depositing it as a daily report, no one would even have to run it, it would just schedule every
Right.
morning at 8 and deposit right into that Google group. But I'm interested to hear more about that, so
Yeah.
I'll go on
So
that website.
we've talked about ODMAP from a state perspective, have not yet found a way to actually integrate it. It's caught up in a bunch of different channels. I think it's a really neat program. I wish it were getting more legs in New York State. Not quite sure why it's not, but it's really neat.
So
We-
one of the advantages to it is that police are using it and they're not using EMS charts. So it's just another tool, even if you sign up for it to be able to follow it from a mapping standpoint, maybe you don't enter data into it,
Okay, yeah.
but you can still sign up and use it to follow the map. You can sign up for different levels of usage, different types of usage, I should say.
That's it from staff?
It's not a EMS council activity, but the Greene County Legislature has been requesting the state to declare the provision of EMS a necessity. And in case you're thinking this is an epiphany on their part with good deeds, I understand it's one of the hoops they have to jump through to get state aid for something in EMS. But, it's a first, so we can take that resolution and bang it over the head with it and try to get something later.
Any other comments? Alright. I guess under new business, 2018 Remsco officer nominations, renominations, and appointments.
So,
Oh, okay, so, you would ask, or I could ask, are there any other nominations from the floor for treasurer other than PJ Keeler? Well, I was asking first. There's also.
We do not have any nominations.
Well, is it a lifetime appointment? I mean, I thought it was. Don't write that. Is there any other nominations from the floor? Is there any other nominations from the floor?
Just a point of order. I'm not sure that the chair of the bylaw, or the nominating committee is the one that runs the
No, it's
elections.
the chair.
So,
being that there, do we have to repeat it? Or can we
Yes.
just?
I
Yes,
mean,
you should.
it probably,
Being that there are no other nominations, additional nominations for secretary, I ask for a motion for the secretary to cast one ballot for PJ Keeler
So moved.
as secretary.
Second.
Any discussion?
On a correction, the position is treasurer, not secretary.
Thank you.
Almost got out of
Almost
this.
got it. Thank you.
I saved it, Peter.
Thank you, Jim.
And
Treasurer.
that was his
Okay.
choice.
So there is a motion, is there a second?
yes.
Is there any discussion?
Gail seconded.
Okay, so the secretary cast one ballot for PJ Keeler as
No.
treasurer.
But there's, no, if it, he's saying the secretary shall cast one vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the secretary shall cast one vote, okay. Next nomination is Lynn Kane for secretary from the nominating committee. Are there any additional nominations? Are there any additional nominations? Are there any additional nominations? Hearing no additional nominations, I ask for a motion from the floor to request the secretary to cast one ballot.
So moved.
So moved, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second, is there any discussion of this election? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The secretary will cast one ballot
For herself.
for herself.
Thank you very much. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Maggie? Okay, next is second vice chair. We have Steve Retzloff. Are there any additional nominations? Are there any additional nominations? Are there any additional nominations? Hearing none, can we have a motion to have the secretary cast one ballot for Steve Retzloff? So
I will.
moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor of Steve Retzloff having a secretary cast one ballot and him as second vice chair?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The secretary will cast one ballot for Steve. Do you want to do first vice chair since I'm first vice chair?
Any other motion for first vice chair
Well, first we
besides
need
Steve
a
Crow?
nomination.
Any other nominations from the floor? Are there any nominations from the floor? Are there any other nominations? Okay, secretary cast a ballot for Steve Retzloff. All in favor?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Okay, now, we have chair.
If I may,
And you may.
just a moment. At this time, the nominating committee would like to offer to the two candidates the opportunity to speak to the council, each for a moment or two, so Terry's head doesn't explode. So, Scott, would you like to say what you'd like to say to the council? Why
Sure.
you, in 30 words or less, why you want to be the boss?
You're gonna have to let me know when we hit 30. I guess for those of you that don't know me, my name is Scott Bowman. I am a representative from Columbia County. I've been a member of this body since, with one short period off the council, since 2001. From 2001 to 2007, I was an at-large member. In 2007, Steve Rinaldi and I switched spots. He was my alternate, and I became his alternate. He was the chair for a while. When he left in, I believe it was 2013, his seat went to somebody else. I'm not sure who ended up in his seat. And I lost the seat that I had had since 2001. And last year, at the end of 2016, I came back onto the council as a Columbia County representative. As you guys know, I've been very active again since coming back over the last year, having served on 3 committees, I think, over the last year. Always been very active at the regional level, going to MAC meetings, academic meetings, state meetings when I can find the time. I find this work to be incredibly important for our profession, working to further the profession, working with the hospitals and the doctors, and you know, as we alluded to in the earlier conversation, trying to bridge that gap. I think it's a thankless job, but super important, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my time here. So I guess that's about it. I appreciate your support. And I did not print a resume. Nice job.
Anne Marie, do you wish now to speak to the council?
Yeah, I did circulate a copy of my resume. I've been chair of the Remsco for the past 1 year. Prior to that, I was on the Remsco Council since 2009. I have been actively chairing and actively involved with the nurse committee all of that time. I think we've grown that nurse committee and certainly have bridged a lot of the issues and concerns and brought them back here, and certainly tried to build relationships with physicians and hospitals and bringing it back to EMS. I would like to say that in my past year as chair, I think everyone knows I've struggled with Robert's rules and conducting the meeting as the Robert's rules state that we would have, but I certainly have stepped up, and I joined the bylaws committee last summer, and really trying to become more versed and understand understanding of the bylaws and the actual, Remsco committee, so I've certainly done that. I have been very committed and very dedicated. I certainly, in my position as, director of the emergency department, I think I bring a lot from the nursing side and from the physicians, and have certainly had that experience of actually 40 years of experience in healthcare. I certainly will continue to be very committed, and there are things that, I think one of my biggest reasons is that I am passionate with the Remsco. I do feel that there are a lot of goals that I had set for myself and for the committee that we didn't achieve, and I certainly own a big piece of that, but I think one of them was the retreat with Dave Kuzlanicki, and I regret that we didn't move forward with that, and I'd like to see us do that with or without myself being the chair, but I really think I'd like to see us move in that direction, and certainly, finalizing the bylaws, because they are the two big things, I think, that are out there and outstanding, and I'd like to maybe pull that together and move forward, and then certainly some of the issues that we talked about tonight, to see if we could, move them in the right direction. So thank you for your consideration, and if you have any questions, certainly just feel free.
Thank you, Scott and Anne Marie. So we have 2 nominations from the nominating committee. Are there any other nominations for chair? Are there any other nominations for chair? Are there any other nominations for chair? Nominations for chair are closed. And we are going to need some ballot tellers. So I'd like if there'd be 2 members of the council that volunteer to be ballot tellers. Kevin? One more? Okay, great. So Tim has printed ballots, and he'll hand them around. Then the 2 ballot tellers will collect the ballots. Is everybody, I believe everybody here is actually a member of the Remsco and is eligible to vote, and vote for your exec box. Other than the staff, yes.
Sorry, I'm not thinking.
Thank you.
Continuing resolutions. If I got a deal for you. Yeah, if I got a deal for you.
Mine said
Tim? Sorry, I just,
Do we need this body to vote on the nominations for Remsco? For Remsco and CMAC, or is that just appointed by the chair?
Just appointed by the chair.
Okay.
But you may want to read it in for the record. I didn't put it on there.
When the letter's signed, ready?
We got the front table? You sent, yeah. Did we get there? CMAC and Remsco.
I did, oh, they're done, oh, yes, absolutely.
Yours?
Okay.
Yes, these are.
Just read it into the record.
So that we nominated, the Remsco nominated.
Right, right.
Scott, sorry to interrupt.
We are, sorry.
No, it's not your fault, just a long day. I didn't realize this was gonna go so long.
Meaning, it's, yeah, I hear you.
I understand.
I would like to say that we, under new business, that we wrote a letter, actually, I wrote a letter to, nominating, or recommending Dr. Daly and Steve Pearl to the Remsco, from the Remsco Council. There had to be a letter, a recommendation from us, and, we did that, and I submitted it by the deadline, which I think was like January, December 12th, something like that.
It's a motion.
Say that. Well, then is that a motion? That's just a statement.
Advisor.
No, I'm just making a statement that I was asked to write that in behalf of the Remsco, so I did do that. Any other business, any other?
Part of what it's.
Do you want to talk about the meeting time or hold that here next
You wanna
meeting?
talk about it?
I was wondering if you want to carry on with additional new business while they're tabulating.
You wanna do that
things.
on
All right, shoot, why not?
Okay.
So,
So the next thing would be the time. We took a survey for the time of the meeting, and Tim is gonna give the results.
Everybody should have a copy of the results. I sent out Survey Monkey to everybody. There were 21 respondents. The 6 PMers took it. 9 AM was close second place by 2 votes, and 12P and 3P are distant thirds and fourths. So it looks like you guys selected 6 PM as your new Remsco starting time.
And for the 8 of you guys that did not vote, make fire ants.
I think we should have a runoff between 9 AM and 6 PM.
My only question, and I don't know if Lynn will speak to this, is
Rock, paper, scissors.
executive board. What do you do with that now?
Well, as I pointed out, there are those of us that, many of us, that wouldn't be able to come during our normal working hours. We do this as volunteers after our shifts.
Let's,
What I'm saying is,
if we pass the new
executive,
bylaws, it might be a moot point, so.
okay, I just wanted to bring that up to you
wait and
because
See how that shakes out.
we have a meeting next month. Does the executive board meet at 5 PM, or does the executive board not meet, or that's what I'm getting at, actually.
Well then, how long before the bylaws are gonna be done?
Well, they can't be voted on for another month.
I understand that, but we're not talking 6, 8 months, right?
I hope not.
So if I made a motion that the new time take effect once the bylaws are done, does that make sense? Carol, I'm looking at you.
You're looking at me.
Come on.
Yeah, unless we just make it a separate, you know, we
Two or
just,
three
unless we just
months, that's
continue the
7.
way we are and then make
How
it
did you end up with the wrong
under
number?
determination separate.
How did you end
How
up
does it
with
only be?
Today's, I
Tell
don't
me she-
think I say this, but
I was just talking about extra things.
10
Listen
sheets
up.
on the table.
Kevin's talking.
Does anybody have a ballot that we did not collect from them?
Did everyone vote?
that's entitled to vote.
Just making sure we have ballots to match the members that are here. Did Kevin put one in?
Kevin, did you and Dale vote?
Everybody vote twice.
I'd like to make a motion that, assuming that the bylaws are soon to be completed, that the change of the start time be tabled until such time the bylaws are adopted, as long as it does not exceed 6 months, and then we'll revisit it.
I'll second that motion.
all in favor? Or just hands?
23 members present, 23 voted. Anne Marie Cross, 12. Scott Bowman, 11.
Congratulations.
Any other discussion from the floor? I think we have moved Terry here, so we could.
Just I think we should congratulate all the new officers, and returning officers, and everybody that ran for a position, for your dedication.
Any other items from the floor? Lynn? The meeting time we did, the endorsement to establish the RE/MAX subcommittee to review the regional signal fee, currently set at $1.10.
Yep. We talked about it, that through the REMAC, but we do need to do confirmation of the REMAC county representatives, please.
Remsco confirmation of RE/MAC county representatives, Columbia, Scott Bowman. Green, Stephen Bricato. Saratoga, Kevin Robert. Schenectady, David Massaro.
I make a motion, we accept those and forward them to the REMAC.
A second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion stands. Remsco review confirmation of one REMAC at-large representative. Two candidates expressed interest, Ken Martin and Lynn Kane.
Ballots. You guys wanna do them? Do you have your box?
Yeah. Nope, you get to vote. But only once.
One move it, you know? I tell you, too bad to do this. Unfortunately.
Just talk about it, or one.
Yeah, I already voted.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, I was up front.
okay.
You just have a picture.
Not for Reagan consensus. That was it, right? Here,
In the interest of time, could we possibly confirm the REMAC?
Nice job, Tony.
How small is Tony?
While they're counting the ballots, all right, we're gonna.
Is that on
keep it
the
moving.
recording?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, can I have everybody's attention?
How do you make that auto injector more?
So in the interest of time, we'd like to do the REMAC seats. Systems Medical Director, Dr. Daly, Chair, Dr. McHugh, and Vice Chair, Dr. Rather.
I'll make a motion that we accept them.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay. Any other items from the floor while they are taking the vote?
The proposed
Filing?
bylaws, because we're past
Okay.
8:30. Proposed bylaws are in the box on the table behind. The six of us worked extremely hard, a lot of compromise. There are certain areas where the committee was split equally in our thoughts. So each and every change to the bylaws, of course, will be voted on by the council. I propose that we don't discuss it tonight, but rather, you take it and we start discussions and possibly voting next month. One thing I would tell you just to bring ahead, we look to reduce the number of the county seats from 3 to 2. However, you have our assurances that we have created the appropriate side of at-large seats. So nobody here will lose their spot on the council. You may not represent your county, but you will be an at-large member. So we wanted to make that clear, so nobody thought they were getting thrown off. Did I do that right, Harold? Good. Okay? So just pick one up on your way out, and we'll start up next month, if we have enough.
With the bylaws, I would like to suggest that we have an informational session with the bylaws committee next month prior to the meeting. And instead of having the executive committee meet in person, maybe the executive committee can have a conference call scheduled several days before the meeting to have their discussions. That way, because I don't know anyone really wants to vote on the bylaws before they get a chance to ask questions and talk about them.
No, that's not what I was
Can't anyway.
proposing.
So, but,
The bylaws have to sit for 30 days after.
right, but so maybe having if we have an informational session on the bylaws with the committee, would that make sense for the committee members, where if we came at 6 o'clock, meeting at 7, 6 o'clock, you could be, or 6:15. That way people can
So you're
ask
treating it
questions.
separate than part of the meeting.
Can we still vote on them at the regular meeting?
Well, I don't think, I don't wanna vote on something, I
If
just
we
have
said
to
it
talk
next
about it.
meeting, they voted on 30
The
days
discussion would
afterwards.
be
So-
during the regular meeting, and no
Right,
voting,
so-
I misspoke, I'm sorry.
So should we start earlier so we have time to work on it, or, I mean, there seems to be a lot in there on the bylaws.
There is.
Or how about in lieu of any executive meeting that we were
I
gonna
think
have, or
that's what-
executive board,
That's
we'll do
so-
that, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
We'll do it at 6.
So are we,
So
are
meet
you
at
making a
6.
motion that we
Yeah,
start next month's meeting?
I'd like to make a motion that the executive committee meet by conference call approximately 1 week before the Remsco meeting, and we begin our meeting next month at 6 PM to allow adequate time for us to consider, to discuss, answer questions, discuss the bylaws. But before I finish that motion, I just want to check, is that if it worked for your schedule, 6 o'clock? We usually ask you that.
Wait, what?
Oh, sorry. Before we move our meeting to 6 o'clock, does that work for you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so then,
She's already asleep, she's home.
I
She's-
think we're bigger
So-
stay hard. No, that's
So
okay.
since that was a motion, I will second it, but then if I can put some discussion on it, I would suggest that unless there is any active business for the executive committee next month, that we not hold the conference call unless there is business that the chair and the executive director believe needs to be done by the executive
I
committee.
will accept that as a friendly amendment to the motion.
Thank you.
Also, since we're going to be discussing, as part of this motion, we're going to be discussing the bylaws, early. So there are some parts to the bylaws that are not being discussed in the handouts. We consulted with Mr. Hannigan, and I have his opinion here. I'll leave that out as well, on some of the information that he wanted. He actually weighed in on it. He sent out an email to all the people on the committee. And that
You are
needs,
not being fair.
Wait,
that
We'll leave
needs
it
to be
to-
part of the discussion.
Yes, it does.
For people to be able to read.
But
And
we,
if it's not included in the handout, then they don't see the whole part.
they will not understand unless we describe it to them. So either we're gonna do it all,
Are
We're
the
not gonna
people
do
of our
just your
board,
piece.
or the people of this council are very bright people,
yes, they are.
okay? And they can read, they can
Okay,
understand, and they can figure it out. And then we can answer discussions, okay?
Is-
Or answer questions. So, I really feel this is important,
And
that
so
this
do
be
Maria
included.
and Anne
Can-
Marie and
Let
I.
me
We
interject
actually
here.
still have a motion
Is
on the
this,
floor, right?
As
there
part
is,
of the
there is a motion on the
it's part of
floor,
discussion
and this is
handing out-
discussion. So, I want to, is this memorandum the subject of what you discussed with the executive committee
Yes.
earlier today? Something was brought before the executive committee earlier today, about, specific to this memorandum. I think that rather than distribute this memorandum at this time, I would like to recommend that.
Steve, come on, man.
Look,
Instead of trying to
it was-
censure
look, it was
somebody
brought- it was
on the
brought-
executive
It was
board.
brought to us, okay? I'm not weighing in on it, okay? Let me just say what I'm gonna say, then you say what you wanna say, okay? It was brought to us at the executive board about how this memorandum was obtained. I would like to suggest, rather than go through that right now, which I don't think we need to do, the chair be able to meet with the members of the bylaws committee to discuss this matter, and discuss with the bylaws committee that it could be sent out a couple days from now even, but is that okay?
Why? I have it here, I have it printed, I have enough for everybody to hear to read it. To be absolutely honest with you, that
It will be,
stuff, I'm speaking right now,
Yes,
please
you
let
are.
me finish. The stuff that happened in the executive board this evening was inappropriate, because you didn't present two sides, you presented one side. Okay, and as a result of that, this was work that was trying to be concluded so that we could actually present something to the board and nobody would respond on it. So to be honest with you, in somebody's defense, they actually took the bull by the horns and got some work done. And this should be read so people can understand it.
Jeff, in what I said, I am, one second, and then please you. I am not criticizing your work. I'm simply saying that that work product was brought up to the executive committee with some questions, okay? Those, I think that there were, like you said, there's two sides to every story. Does it hurt for us to have a discussion of that with you, the person presenting that paper, and the person that brought it to the executive committee before we distribute it?
Well, the problem is, this never should have been handled in executive committee. This is not something that executive committees handle. This is something that should be put in front of the entire council so that they can read. It is not an inflammatory thing, it is nothing wrong with it.
Can I just say something? I don't care
Let
what.
Lynn go first, if you would.
Oh,
Okay.
Okay.
I just didn't-
Folks, I'm sure you can appreciate that people on a committee is as important as the bylaws. Can it be difficult, and can we sometimes not all agree? Yes? No? You all think I'm crazy? Well, more so than normal, okay? This particular committee is split exactly 50-50 on this one particular issue. We were able to resolve our differences on everything else. And Emery and Maria and I propose to bring it to the council. If you don't share our concern, then the issue goes away with your vote. I have a concern, the other person has a concern. We both deserve the opportunity to explain our concerns.
The
Our
other
attorney
person,
has
well,
weighed in, excuse me, I'm not done. Our attorney weighed in person about this issue, and the other people on the committee didn't like the answer they got. So they got a different opinion, or more information to support their thoughts.
the attorney verified to me in person that he never weighed in on this topic, period.
And he weighed in with me on Friday afternoon that he did.
Okay, he told me specifically that he never weighed in on this particular topic and he had never seen this particular clause. We asked, the three of us that disagreed with you, asked on multiple occasions to either meet or get an opinion from the attorney because we were split evenly on this, and you refused to do it.
I did not
You
refuse
didn't
any
answer.
such thing.
Am I talking this time? And you refused to answer emails. I have a whole chain of emails that went unanswered. Jeff has a whole chain of emails printed out that went unanswered. So on my way to work, I stopped and asked Tim Hannigan if he had heard from you. He had not. I presented the question to him. He gave an answer. I presented that to you. The night before elections for chair, you go into executive session and bash me on a topic where I have no opportunity to defend myself or present
That,
counter evidence, or whatever you want to call it. That's wrong, Lynn. What you did tonight was wrong.
no, it
Period.
was not.
It was wrong.
You don't even know the whole story, and you will be told the whole story by someone other than me.
It was wrong.
No, it wasn't.
Go ahead. This issue, as Jeff said, needs to be given to the entire council. These people in this room are not a bunch of idiots. They're not a bunch of sheep that need to just follow along. Everybody in this room should have an opportunity to hear what Tim Hannigan said about this clause so that they can make a decision. They don't need to wait until next week for us to give it to them. There's no reason for that.
Just to clarify, for everyone's knowledge, whatever the issue is, I only know cursory what it is because I had to ask for it. That wasn't discussed tonight. I'm gonna bring it up because I don't think it's a big executive session point, to be honest with you.
It shouldn't be.
What
That's
was
my point.
discussed, what was brought up and discussed was the manner in which your opinion was obtained. That's really all that ended up being
I
discussed
understand
at the end of the day. So, what the issue is, what one group's concern is versus the other, we didn't debate that at all.
I understand it.
And we purposely did that because that wasn't the place for it.
I understand.
And honestly, I don't really appreciate you telling people that I didn't answer you because I couldn't be bothered. I have another
I didn't
job
say you
and a
didn't.
family. You
I never
said
said
that
you didn't.
all of the emails went unanswered.
I'm
And
talking about
because
the
I
chair.
don't agree with you doesn't mean I think this council is
Maria, I'm
stupid.
talking about the chair. The chair didn't answer
And I
us.
work a job too. I'm not on my
So
computer all
Scott,
day.
I also was at work for those 2 full days.
I'm
And I
sorry.
don't sit there and look at my emails all day,
I'm sorry, but that was a
I looked at it on
week.
Saturday.
I
No, it
asked this
wasn't a week.
question.
Mm-mm.
It
No.
was. I asked this
No.
question
Because I printed it too.
No, you asked it on
Jeff,
Wednesday.
when did I ask this
answered it
question?
on Thursday. Aren't you guys all happy we're not talking about the bylaws?
So,
Jeff, when did I ask this question?
Are we still discussing it?
Can I,
If I remember
Yeah,
right.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, we're gonna hand out these bylaws tonight. Next month, we're gonna discuss it. Then we got 30 days to vote on it. So you guys can present exactly what you wanna present next meeting, right?
There you go.
Am I wrong? I mean,
Nope.
do we need
That's
60
exactly
days?
correct.
So,
Do we need 60 days to digest it or 30?
Well, it's not likely to be
So,
done
Lynn,
as one whole.
Lynn, I'm a big boy. Let me get the questions from them.
Excuse me, I'm the chair of the committee, and I expect that we're gonna vote item by item,
so.
not as a whole.
So, in interest of time, because people, it's getting late and people are testy, I have a suggestion that I don't want to make as a motion, but as a consensus idea, and if people don't like it, we'll throw it out. Now everybody knows that what's in the memorandum that Jeff has is controversial, and that there's an equal split on the committee on the content of that memorandum. Jeff does make a good point that we're all adults and we can read. I think the point Lynn makes is that she wanted everyone to know that that is not the opinion of the committee, that's the opinion of 3 members of the committee, correct?
Of half of the committee, correct.
We all have the ability to communicate with each other with an
Members
email.
of the committee and our
So,
lawyer.
so if Jeff distributes that tonight, and Lynn wishes to write or Lynn and other members of the committee wish to write a response to that and share it with members of the Remsco, they can certainly do that between now and the next meeting. We can talk about the specifics of the next meeting. And we don't have to finish the bylaws at the meeting after that. I would suggest that we probably need to sit down with the bylaws committee and work out a process of consideration. We may want to do section by section, so we're not overwhelmed in a meeting that only takes a couple hours in trying to do it all, because there's a lot of changes, and I don't know that we need a process to work through this that's orderly, that doesn't get us all lost. So I would propose that Lynn hands out the bylaws, Jeff's memorandum is handed out, Lynn and all the members of the committee have the opportunity to share their opinion on that memorandum with Remsco members between now and the next month. Is there any objection to that as a exit strategy for tonight?
We're clear that we can't vote on them at the regular business meeting after we talk about them at the first meeting?
Well, we would not be voting on them next month no matter what. There's an aging process.
Okay.
But I'm gonna also suggest as we look at this, we may wanna do one section one night, another section another night, because it may take a while if there's things that we need to learn about in this. Does anyone object to that?
No?
Okay. So I don't think we need to make an emotion as much as you're doing it, right? Okay.
Here, I'll hand them
I just want to say on the record that I sent that email Friday, 9:43 a.m., January the 12th. You can roll your eyes all you want, Maria. I'm making it a point that I sent this question Friday, January the 12th at 9:43 a.m.
I thought we decided to
It was a week.
discuss this next month, though, and we're
Just making a
continuing
point.
on, but that's the point,
I'm just making a
that's one
point.
nonetheless.
I'm
I
just
don't think we
making a
should
point.
continue this, I think we should continue this next month,
It's fine.
thank you.
Okay. We have the results of the ballot from the REMAC at-large voting. So Ken Martin, 14, Lynn Kane, 9.
Congratulations.
Have a motion to adjourn?
Did I take it? Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Actually, I have an old business. Did you have an item 24 opportunity? Did we have a vote on who were the Semsco reps for this year? I don't remember voting on that at any point. You said you wrote a letter, but I don't remember voting on that.
I think the regional council has to affirm that.
What's that?
I think the regional council has to affirm the vote.
Okay. So the letter went out for Dr. Daly and for Steve Kroll as members of the Semsco.
Well, a letter can be rescinded if it needs to be.
It was a letter of recommendation.
Well, I guess, was there any discussion if anybody else was interested? It's an annual thing,
Scott,
right?
it was brought to my attention, I was asked by Tim if I would write a letter as a chair, just
I'm not
send a
yelling at you,
recommendation.
don't get defensive, I'm not yelling at you, I'm asking a question. It's an annual appointment, right? Or no? What's the,
I think it's 4 years.
what's the,
So-
I'm just asking a question.
So we got a letter from the state about 3 or 4 months ago stating that we had not made our appointment for 2016. I had been elected and had been serving as our delegate and as the chair of the Remsco in 2016 and 2017. And on the way, and we received a retroactive letter saying, oh, you guys never sent in the renewal nomination. And Tim asked me if I was to write a letter of interest, and Anne Marie sent a letter of recommendation, but it was retroactive, it's literally retroactive to the time that I've already served.
Okay, so how long?
So
I do not know the
should we have-
expiration date of that.
Should there be another person that I was just asked to write the letter, so should there be another person that we would recommend?
Not
We
necessarily,
just
no,
needed context for the letter. That's-
no, I'm just wondering what the context is and how long the.
Did I get that right, Tim, on the date?
I'm not exactly sure on the date. I received a request by a Department of Health Bureau of EMS to approach our chairperson of the regional council to endorse or reaffirm the current CMAC and Semsco representatives. I forwarded that correspondence to Anne Marie. That's my part.
I will go back and check the dates. I'll find that, I don't think I have, I'm just looking, I don't believe that correspondence came to me. I will find that correspondence and report back as to that term and to the body at our next meeting. Fair enough?
Just as a point of discussion.
And I certainly would be glad to ask to be appointed by a vote if that's appropriate. And I would be fine if the council felt also that I was not the person that should be appointed.
Well, I think you've done a fine job. I just want to make sure that everything's done right and correctly, that's.
Yep, I'll check that.
I would just suggest we put that to a vote right now, be done with it, and move on, reaffirm that letter.
Why?
We don't have any idea what they're even asking us to.
I think I'd want to know what the term is before I vote on anything, what we're affirming.
I'll try to do a search. I believe it's 1 year.
No, it's
No?
longer than a year.
I believe it's 5.
No, I think it's longer
I
than
believe
that.
it's 5.
Definitely longer than a year.
I wanna say it's 5 and it's on the,
The one thing I remember is that we were in arrears on our appointment, and I was serving, the way the bylaws of the Semsco read is you serve until you are replaced.
Correct.
So I was not serving illegitimately, but our region had not submitted a timely nomination. And I do not know that we had been asked for a timely nomination, because sometimes, as member Semsco, both I know and Les know, sometimes they just kind of, the Bureau of EMS gets behind in asking. So I don't know that we were in arrears as much as we were in arrears because they realized that they didn't have the official documentation of this.
I think it's timely, that you know, to bring it up in conjunction with our recent elections, that we probably should factor that into some, you know, timeframe moving forward, that if we know what the state's requirements are, and I don't have any blame or misgivings that the abbreviated meeting schedule of the state may be some of the cause why you guys didn't get that in a timely fashion.
I don't have any, Tim looks like he's checking his desk. Give Tim a minute to check his desk, or we can pick it up next meeting.
I say pick it up next meeting.
Terry leave.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any choice after Terry's gonna leave.
I mean, seriously, it's like, Terry, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Seriously.
Yeah, this is fine.
Maybe I'll get some questions.
have the letter, or?
Are we waiting for Tim?
I think, we're gonna do it this one. So we,
Tim, are we waiting for you, or are we gonna?
Well, I was going to print the correspondence I received from DOH. They were soliciting your endorsement of Steve and Mike. I thought I sent it to the printer. Give me 1 second and I'll.
I realize it's out of order, but as long as Terry's fingers are still on the keyboard. And we're waiting for Tim to find this. Can we just briefly discuss the REMAC grant as well? Just for folks at the table, several years ago we endorsed the idea of having a $5,000 grant available through the REMAC for research to be performed. There is a group of researchers at Skidmore College that are interested in investigating the educational quality and the educational retention of a low functioning or a low call volume EMS agency with limited experience with the syringe access epinephrine kits. We talked about it in the executive board. We're still looking to find out what the original plan of approval of a grant is. This grant application has 2 advisors on it. One is Dr. Jagoda, one is myself. I think this is actually a really interesting project being put together by some members of a collegiate EMS organization. Some folks made some very, very reasonable comments to change the institutional review board application for the study project, which I think will make it a stronger project that I will bring back to the group. But they're asking for about $4,000 to support a study involving collegiate EMS in the capital region and the use of syringe access epinephrine kits. I will excuse myself from a vote on this, but do bring this forward as a motion. I have no fiduciary participation in this. The money is going to go for supplies for the test, remuneration to the CICs who will do the testing, and transportation to get the folks that do the study to a conference to present the data. And I support this and would appreciate if we could fund it. Actual number. I ended up with a lot of paper in front of me. Sorry, I was going to give you the actual number that they are looking for is $4,118.47. This includes Dunkin' Donuts gift cards for the participants at $10 a pop, and gift cards for the CLIs and psychomotor evaluators at $50 a pop. I will let you know that the increase in the CLIs was all my fault. I'm sorry to increase the cost of the project, but I wanted to make sure that the instructions were being done. So, coffee's coffee. So.
Any discussion?
Was there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we fund the project for Dr. Daly's group that he was supporting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion stands. Was there a discussion before we took a motion?
All right, so Tim's pulled the letter that answers the question Scott asked. So this letter is dated November 27th, 2017. This is to inform you that a representative to New York State Emergency Medical Services Council, Stephen Kroll's term expired on December 31, 2016. So this letter came 1 year after the expiration date of the term that I am serving in. Please forward a letter of nomination by January 15th. So basically, we got a letter 11 months while I served on that body as the chair, saying that my term had expired and I was serving because I had not yet been replaced. So the letter that Anne Marie wrote was to retroactively in arrears deal with that situation because they had not, to my knowledge, we never received a letter earlier asking for me to be nominated before December 31, 2016. Does this make any sense, the timeline? So that's why that occurred. I am perfectly willing, matter of fact, I would ask that if the body wishes for me to serve beyond January 1 of 2018, that there be a motion for me to serve, or we feel it's time for someone else to step in, that I would be glad for that as well. But I understand the question being asked about whether this body has approved it or not. And
Steve, I believe that's past practice, so we did that before.
yeah, so this bureaucracy is sort of took us off track only because it came a year post-dated to where the issue should have been dealt with.
So is that something we should be doing every December?
I
for the
believe
coming year?
I'm not sure if it's a 1 or 2 year term. I will have to find out. I know it's not, someone mentioned 5, it's not 5. I will look in the bylaws of the Remsco.
For this, I think it's one. If it was 1 year, right, there would never be anybody on the council, because it takes a year to vet somebody.
That's a good point.
Right?
So, yeah, it's gotta be 2 years at least, so.
I know the reason the system's medical director terms are 5 years is because that was the term of a member of the CMAC, so they correspond together, which is why I thought I carried over to the council.
I'd like to make a motion that we formally approve Steve as our representative to the State EMS Council for a term to include the appropriate expiration date as he will research and report back, lest it be 2017, 18, or years beyond, as in accordance with the state's guidance.
Did you get all that, Terry?
Glad I didn't have to say that one, Jim.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Congratulations or condolences.
Motion we adjourn now?
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
We're all in favor. Terry, for hanging in. You didn't have to prop up your head about
No.